Welcome to Advanced Warehouse Management. We're going to go through a day in the life of inbound processing and min-max replenishment in this session. Immediately after lunch, we're having another session in the same room that covers the outbound side of the processes. But in this session, we're going to be covering the inbound processing side and a little bit on replenishment with respect to the min-max replenishment approach. My name is Jason Reed. I'm a Senior Escalation Engineer at Microsoft. I'm within our support organization out of our Fargo, North Dakota office. I've been working with AX since around 2002 and in the ERP world for about 20 years. All that time has been around the supply chain area of industries, mainly focused around manufacturing and distribution type organizations. So some of the topics that we're going to cover today, we'll start with the warehouse layout overview. And as part of that, we're going to get into some concepts around how you structure the warehouse. Some key concepts around that, obviously, are the locations that you define within the warehouse, separating those locations into various zones. And we'll talk about some storage strategies that you can put in place around fixed locations, stocking limits, and volumetrics. In addition to that, we'll talk about some of the product setup. Some of this relates to the things you see on the screen here. There's some key concepts in advanced warehouse management with respect to product configuration. The storage dimension group configuration, we'll talk a little about that. Reservation hierarchies. Reservation hierarchies is a concept that's more related to the outbound side, but since we're covering product setup in this session, I'm going to jump into reservation hierarchies and talk a little bit about what they do. There's a concept called unit sequence groups, and what you'll learn as part of that discussion is that we have the ability to configure various units of measure in the system, and we can sequence them based on a number of criteria. So using these unit sequence groups, we can determine which units of measure constitute something called a license plate. And when we go up through our storage dimension discussion, we'll talk about the concept of a license plate and what that essentially means. In addition to that, we'll talk about physical dimension setup. So during our storage strategies and volumetric stocking limits, we can define for each location what the length, width, height is for each of those. Well, in addition to that, we can define that at the item level or at the SKU level to determine what will fit in a given location. So we'll talk about how you go about doing that in AX. Once we've set up the system from a warehouse standpoint and a product setup standpoint, we have to define the overall process for receiving goods into our warehouse. So what happens when we receive a purchase order? Obviously, we need to get it into the receiving dock, and we need to figure out where in the warehouse it needs to end up going. So there's some key concepts here that control that. Work templates, defining the steps that are required, what needs to be done within the warehouse. Location directives allow us to define where things will go in the warehouse, set the rules that determine where inventory should be put once it's been received. And the mobile device menu items define how the users interact with the system. So how do the workers in the warehouse interact with AX when they're performing these functions? So we'll talk about each of those. And once we've gone through all of that, we're going to talk about a concept called min-max replenishment. And when we get into our warehouse layout discussion in just a moment here, it'll make a little more sense. But essentially what we're saying here is that we want to make sure that the area of our warehouse that's dedicated to picking goods and shipping to our customers gets replenished from the bulk storage areas on a periodic basis. Okay? We want to make sure that we keep that area full so that we maximize efficiency within the warehouse. As part of that setup, we have a number of things we need to define. In addition to, since this is a process in the system, we have some of the same concepts that we have on inbound processing. We have to define the location directives, which tell us where to go get things and where to put things. We define the steps that are required to complete that work, and that's done through our work template. And we define how the users will interact through the mobile device menu items. But in addition to that, we have to define our replenishment templates. And our replenishment templates tell us how we want to go about performing our replenishments. When should a replenishment take place? Okay? So we'll go into each of those concepts in detail. Okay. First thing we want to talk about is the warehouse layout. And on this next slide, what you see is a very basic warehouse layout. And it kind of shows the structure of the warehouse that I'm going to be using in my 2 sessions today. Okay. Down in the lower left-hand corner, you see our receiving docks. And I'm showing one truck backed up to that receiving dock and a couple of different SKUs. So as you look at this, one thing you'll notice is that these various boxes are different colors, and that's just used to identify that they're different SKUs. Okay? So apparently we're just selling boxes of various colors. Okay? So we've got a purple box and a yellow box at our receiving dock. Once the goods come into the receiving dock, they need to be taken off the dock and put into various locations. When you look at this layout, we see that we have our bulk storage racks, and typically when we receive our goods, we're going to want to put the goods into the bulk storage rack and then use replenishment to move inventory into the picking area. Okay. Now, I will be showing you some other options that you have there. In some cases, you may want to simply put goods directly to the picking area, depending on how much of a given item is being received, whether or not that picking area is already full or not. A number of different approaches could be used there. But what you see in this example is that we're putting goods into the bulk storage locations, and then we're moving goods into the picking area through the replenishment process. And then once we have inventory in that replenishment area, notice that pick face that we have on the right-hand side of the screen there, those are much smaller locations. Okay? So what that's telling us is that we have much less inventory sitting in that pick face so that people don't have to move around so much when they're picking inventory for sales. Okay? My distance of travel is significantly less in the picking area than it is in the bulk storage area. By configuring my warehouse in this way, I'm essentially increasing the efficiency of that picking process. Okay? Once I've put the goods into my picking area and orders come in, we'll see during the outbound discussion later on that goods will be taken out of the picking area, placed on our conveyor belt, and transferred to our packing stations. Okay? Once those goods are in the packing station, we'll pack those goods, send them to the shipping dock, and get them out the door. Okay? So some key takeaways from this. Each of the large areas of our warehouse would be considered a zone. So we have a bulk storage zone, a picking zone, a receiving zone, packing zone, and a shipping zone. Okay? So that's what we mean by zone. Within each of those, we have various locations. Okay? So when we look at our bulk storage racks, there's bulk 1, bulk 2, bulk 3. They're all assigned to the bulk zone. Okay? So that's the high-level overview of what we'll be going through here today. Let's do a little demo of how that's configured in AX. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is the warehouse setup. So under warehouse management, first of all, my screen is acting up a little bit here, so let me just refresh some. That's interesting. We'll do it this way, warehouse setup, and then under warehouse setup, we'll go take a look at our warehouses. For our discussion today, this is all the Contoso demo data. I'm going to be looking at warehouse number 24. Okay, so all of the work we do today will be in warehouse 24. And you'll notice that on our warehouse form, we have this warehouse management fast tab. That's where we do most of the setup specific to a warehouse within the Advanced Warehouse Management module. There are some key setups here. One of the things that you see here is a default inventory status ID. As part of the Advanced Warehouse module, we added 2 new storage dimensions to AX. We have inventory status and we have license plate. Inventory status, pretty self-explanatory. Is it inventory? Is it available inventory? Is it unavailable inventory? Is it inventory sitting at the receiving dock? Is it inventory sitting in a quality control location? Those types of things. Okay? So we're defining what is the status of that inventory and is it available for use when shipping to customers. So we'll talk about that in detail in a moment. In addition to that, we created a license plate dimension that we'll talk about as well. Okay. One key thing that I want to point out, there is a concept called check digits in AX. Going back to our warehouse layout discussion, we have a number of locations in the warehouse, right? And the way this system is designed is it's intended to tell the worker where they should go to perform a certain function, whether it's to pick inventory or to put inventory based on a purchase receipt. Okay. The check digit concept allows us to create a unique identifier in the system that the warehouse worker doesn't really know. Okay? And then we print that as a barcode on the location label. It's a way of ensuring that they're going where we're telling them to go. They're not just going to a different location and saying that they're at the specified location. Okay? So it's a control feature. If you mark that, use unique check digit option, you're saying that I must have a unique check digit for each location. Okay? I can't have the same check digit for 2 different locations. Highly recommend that you enable that if you're using check digits. Now, if you're going to use Advanced Warehouse Management in this warehouse, you need to have the Use Warehouse Management Processes option marked. Once it's marked, it cannot be unmarked. And you notice at the top of the screen it says Warehouse 24 uses Warehouse Management Processes, but you have WMS2 enabled. Okay? That's not a supported scenario, but because we need demo data, we can have it set up that way in the demo environment. It's just letting us know that you can't do that. With AX7, if you've been going to the AX7 warehouse management sessions this week, you know that WMS2 is being decremented in AX7. Yes. So the question is, if I have an environment where one warehouse, say for our example, warehouse 24, uses advanced warehouse management, but in warehouse 11, we don't use warehouse management processes, and maybe we use WMS2. Okay? Can we do that? The short answer to that is no. That is not a supported configuration. Okay? That said, it's not supported because we've never tested it. So we don't know what might break. Okay? I do know that if you accidentally create output orders in a warehouse management enabled warehouse, you're going to have problems. So certain things, you're opening yourself up to problems, which is why it's not supported. At the configuration key level, they should be mutually exclusive. If you're using advanced warehouse, you should disable WMS2. Okay, so now within each warehouse, going back to warehouse number 24, we have our inventory locations. So if we go to inventory locations, here you see that I have a whole bunch of locations within warehouse 24. Each of those locations can be assigned to a zone. Okay. Notice that I don't have all of my locations in the warehouse assigned to a zone. So it's not actually required to separate out locations by zone. Zone is a useful tool that you can use to group locations together, but it isn't required. And when we get into location directives, you'll kind of understand why. That said, every location must have a location profile. So when we look at the location profile configuration on this, there's a lot of setup behind this, so I'm not going to get into a ton of detail on it, but I do want to just briefly show some things on this. Looking at the location profile, you see that there are a number of options at the top of the screen, but for specifically related to this presentation, if you look at the bottom of the screen, we have our location heights, widths, depths, volumes, maximum weight, etc. Okay? So what this is telling us is that when you're setting up your locations, you assign a location profile to them, and it's those location profiles that control or define what the physical dimensions of the locations are. Okay? Once you've defined those, you can then use them to calculate your space availability within those locations. Okay? Some other options that are important here, something called location format. Now if we go back to our locations, you see here, excuse me, within the web shop, we have a locations CP-001 through CP-009. When we look at these, that CP-001 is controlled through the location format. So if I go to view details on my location format, I see that it has a segment description, length of 2, and then an aisle of 3. Okay? So this is where you're defining what those locations should look like. Okay? And then there's some wizards that you can use to actually build the locations within the system. We also have a location type. Location types are really a useful tool in the system because you can actually use location types to control where users can put certain, complete certain work. Okay? So if I'm doing an inbound receipt, I want to force them to put it into a staging location. I don't want to allow the user to override and go into, say, a bulk location directly. Okay? I can set that up on my mobile device menu items and my work class IDs to control what location types are acceptable for the put side of that activity. Okay? In addition to that, there's a couple of different location types that are critical. One is the pack location type, and one is the bay door location type. Okay? Those are tied back to our warehouse management parameters and essentially define when a load on the outbound side is considered completed. Okay. Excuse me. So the question was, I mentioned that you're allowed to, that you can use location type to control where users put inventory. Can you use it to control from where users pull inventory? The answer to that is no. Okay. So it's through that warehouse management setup and discussion, that warehouse management setup area that we actually control where the locations are and group them by zone and location profile ID. And we'll see in a little while how those functions are used to control the process within warehouse management. So let's go back and just talk a little bit about some additional setups that we're going to need to have configured for warehouse management. And that's around the product. So in AX, I mentioned that you can't have WMS2 and Advanced Warehouse Management. Okay? Now you can have WMS1 and Warehouse Management. So it's entirely possible that you want to use advanced warehouse functions for certain SKUs in the system, but don't use warehouse management functions for other SKUs. Okay? So when we're defining our products for warehouse management, we have to set up some key things, and those are listed here. Okay? It's storage dimension group, our reservation hierarchy, unit sequence groups, and our physical dimensions. Okay? So let's just talk about what those mean in detail. Okay, my demo environment dropped here, so let's just give it a moment. It'll come back up. Okay, while that's reloading, let's just go back to our warehouse layout discussion. So, as part of this discussion on product configuration, one of the key things that you'll see is that in the storage dimension groups, we have the two new storage dimensions. We have our inventory status, and we have our license plate. Okay. So what is a license plate? As you look at this, you notice that we have big groups of boxes in the bulk storage area. We have small groups of boxes in the pick phase. Okay? So what is a license plate in that case? Well, what a license plate is, at a very high level, is a grouping of SKUs. I don't know where that's coming from. It's a group. What we have is a grouping of SKUs together. So it's a way of grouping things together. Now, you may have one SKU, multiple units of the same SKU going into one license plate. You may have multiple SKUs. So item A0001 and item A0002 both going into the same license plate. So there's a number of different things that could be done. And for grouping those units together. And I see that my connection dropped completely now, so I'm going to just do something quickly here to try and get that back. Okay, so what you'll see in just a moment here, I'm hoping, is that The storage dimension setup is unique for warehouse management and allows us to define our license plate and inventory status dimensions. Okay. Okay, so let's take a quick look at that. So I'm just going to go start with one of the items I'm going to be using for my demo today. So under Product Information Management, Common Released Products, one of the items I'll be using is this HDMI cable. I'm going to be using the 6-foot HDMI and the 12-foot HDMI. And under dimension groups, you see that I have assigned storage dimension group where. So if I go to view details on that, we see that one of the key things that we've added here is this use warehouse management processes checkbox. Okay? So what that does is it essentially locks it down. It essentially says there's really only one way you can define your storage dimension groups if you're using advanced warehouse management. Okay? You must use site, you must use warehouse, you must use location, you must use status, and you must use license plate. Okay? Physical inventory must be marked for all of them, and you must allow blank receipt and blank issue on your license plate. Okay? So one of the things, I mentioned that license plates, this license plate dimension is a group of items. Maybe I don't want to group my items together at certain locations. It's very common to have situations where the pick face, for instance, has just loose items in it. If I'm selling, I don't know, if I'm selling mobile phones, I don't necessarily have all my mobile phones grouped together into cases of 5. Okay? I have one mobile phone on top of one mobile phone on top of one mobile phone. Okay? Inventory status is also required, and it controls whether inventory is available for picking purposes. Okay? So, for all intents and purposes, there's really only one way to configure your storage dimensions when you're using warehouse management. In addition to that, we have a new concept called Reservation Hierarchy. Let's take a quick look at that. What Reservation Hierarchy allows you to do is control the level at which you want to reserve your inventory. Okay? So within those of you that have been working with AX for a long time, you know that we always historically have reserved down to the most granular level in the storage dimension group setup, right? So and tracking dimension setup. So if I'm using batch numbers and I reserve my inventory on the sales order, I'm reserving a specific batch. I'm reserving at a specific location. Well, that can cause problems in a warehouse, right? So we need to do something to deal with that. And the concept of reservation hierarchies is what we do to deal with that. Really, what we're doing is we're saying when we reserve inventory, we're only going to reserve inventory at the inventory dimensions that are above the location dimension in this hierarchy. Okay? So what we're saying in this setup is that site, warehouse, and inventory status will be reserved at the point that we process a reservation. Okay? We won't reserve a specific location, and we won't reserve a specific license plate. Okay? Let's take a look at batch above. Batch above is saying batch is above location. So if I were to reserve a sales order for an item that's assigned to this reservation hierarchy, I would reserve a specific batch. Okay? It's going to pick a batch, and that's the batch I'm going to have to ship. The batch, if I choose the batch reservation hierarchy, I notice that batch is below it. So I'm saying I'm not going to select a specific batch. Okay? One thing to make note of, when you look at this screen, it seems very flexible. It's not all that flexible. Okay? So when you set up these reservation hierarchies, really all you have the ability to control is whether batch and serial number are above or below location. Okay? That's all the control you have. When you look at it here, it would appear that maybe I can move license plate above location and reserve specific license plates. I can't do that. Okay? So just understand that all you're doing is controlling whether batch or serial numbers would be reserved. Now, I'm going to edit A0001 now. And I've assigned a unit sequence group called pieces-PL. So if we go look at this, we see that I have 2 units of measure defined for this item. Okay? What I'm saying here is that my primary unit, my number 1 unit, is pieces. I also have a secondary unit called PL, or pallet. Okay? Something I want to point out, though, is this concept of license plate grouping. Notice that license plate grouping is marked for pieces, but it's not marked for PL. Okay? What that's essentially saying is that when I receive units, when I receive a purchase order in the system, I want to break my license plates up in quantities of PL. Okay? So, for instance, if one pallet is 100 pieces, and I receive a purchase order for 300 pieces, that's 3 license plates. Okay? That's what this configuration would do. If I marked license plate grouping for PL, I'm essentially saying I never want to automatically split up my license plates. Okay? In that case, I would have 1 license plate for all 300 units. Okay. Then we also have some defaults in here. Do I want to use this unit for purchasing or production, that type of thing. Okay. So now that we've defined our unit sequence group, in addition to that, we talked about on the location profile the fact that you can set it up with height, width, depth for the locations. In addition to setting that up, you can actually assign dimensions to the SKU. So if we look at our physical dimension group ID, we'll go to View Details here. You can create a physical dimension group ID by unit. So I can say my pieces have a width, depth, height of 888, and my pallets are 800, 800, 800. Okay? So I can define at the unit level what those physical dimensions are. So when the system is determining where to put my inventory, it can use those dimensions to determine where space might be available. Okay. All right. Next, I want to talk a little bit about inbound processing. So this is where the rubber really meets the road here, right? So we've talked a lot about setup and where we have locations in the system, how we can define those things. I also want to talk about how we define the steps that are required when we receive a purchase order, how we control which locations inventory should go to when we receive a purchase order, and how we want the system to interact with the end user when we receive a PO. I think we have a question. Okay. So the question was, if I, thank you. So the question was, if I have when I'm setting up an item for warehouse management purposes, what are the required setups that I need to have? I need to have the storage dimension group set up, marked as use warehouse management. I need to have a unit sequence group assigned, even if I only have 1 unit in that unit sequence group. And I need to have a reservation hierarchy. Other stuff is optional. Okay. So let's go through some of the other setup. Now we're going to define the actual process and how we want the system to behave when we receive POs. Okay? So I'll go under Warehouse Management. I'll go under Setup. And there's a ton of setup here. But the first thing I want to look at is Work Templates. Okay? So if we look at our Work Templates, the first thing you see at the top of the screen here is we have a work order type. Okay? So I'm going to use work order type purchase orders. And I have one called 24 PO Direct. So what you're seeing here are the steps that are required in order to receive a PO, okay, in order to get inventory put away in the proper warehouse locations. First thing I have to do, if you look at the bottom, is I have to pick it up. All right, pick it up with my forklift, pick it up with a cart, with a pallet mover, whatever it might be, and then I have to put it down somewhere. Okay, so that's a very simple set of steps, right? I'm just saying pick it up, put it down. Okay? Obviously, that could get more complex. If I wanted to, I could add additional steps here. I could say, well, once I've put it down the first time, maybe I need to pick it up again. Okay? So I'm going to pick it up using a different work class ID. Now, in this case, I only have one work class ID, so I would have to create a new one. And it's pretty simple to create one of these. I just say what the work order type, in this case, purchase order. I give it a name. But one other thing that I mentioned earlier around location types, this is where you tell the system where you can actually put this inventory. Okay? So maybe I want to control this a little more. Maybe I wanted to say, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's say this step can only go to a stage location. Okay? So if a user tried to put it in a location that didn't have a location type of stage, they would receive an error. So I'm going to make this one put away. And now I need to have my put side of that. So once I've picked it up, I have to put it down. And I'll say put away. Now, notice that I have a red warning down here. It's saying invalid. All puts except the last put must have a directive code. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to say directive code stage. Now this is an important concept in warehouse management. Essentially what I'm saying here with that directive code is that I want to limit the locations that can be selected for that type of put. Okay? Now, it seems like we're duplicating effort here, right? Because just a moment ago, I said I can control that through the work class ID, right? If I went into this work class ID, I kind of did it backwards, so let me do it this way. I'm going to say stage, and then on work class ID here, I'm going to remove that. Okay. So essentially what I'm saying here is the first step is I pick it up from the receiving dock, and then I put it down using directive code stage. Okay? That directive code will tie back to my location directives, which controls the default location the system recommends to my warehouse worker. Okay? I can set it up so that the warehouse worker can override the location that they're putting it to if I want to prevent them from putting it to anything other than a staging location. So say I have 5 staging locations. The system recommends stage 01. Okay? Worker comes along, picks it up, walks over, says, I don't want to put it at stage 01. I want to put it in the office. And maybe I have an office location. If I don't want to allow them to do that, then I would do that through my work class ID restriction. Okay? So that's controlling what the worker does. The directive code is controlling what the system recommends. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and remove these other options here. I don't actually have staging locations in my Warehouse 24, but you get the idea. I can set up multiple steps in here. In addition to having pick-put work types, there are other work types I can put in place. Some of these are valid for inbound, some aren't. For instance, print is valid. If I need to print a label, I can include that in my work template. If I want to change the status at the point I do a receipt, I can include that in my work template. But I wouldn't be able to throw counting in there for this purpose. There is one called custom. So if you want to write custom code, you can actually use work type custom and then assign a specific custom work code that you've defined that ties back to a method within a class. Okay. So this is the way we've set up the system to do our receipts. We're just going to do a very simple one, a pick it up and put it down. Now, where do we need to put it down is defined through our location directives. Okay? So we're going to go under Warehouse Management Setup, Location Directives. And in this case, we have our work order type purchase orders. And I've created a couple of different options here. One of the things I've defined in this location directive is a disposition code. Okay? So I've got two disposition codes here. Sequence number 1 uses disposition code receive, and sequence number 2 uses disposition code quality check. Okay? So the idea behind this is that when the receiving person receives a PO, if they determine that something needs to go through quality control, they would choose a different disposition code, and the system will route them to a different location. Okay? So as I'm looking at this, with sequence number 1, the first thing we see is at the top of the screen we have an edit query option. Okay? So if I click on edit query, it just shows me I don't have any restrictions here. The way the system is going to choose the right location directive is it's going to look at, when I perform the receipt, what disposition code did I select, okay, and find a location directive that matches that. Okay. If it doesn't find that at sequence number 1, it'll go on to sequence number 2. If it doesn't find it at 2, it'll go on to 3, so on and so forth. Okay. In addition to that, other restrictions may be in place under the edit query. Obviously, we're restricting by warehouse as well. I believe the edit query here is purely and. There would not be a way of doing an or. Question was, just to double check, is the disposition code the same as batch disposition code? No, it is not. It's different. Okay? When we look at this disposition code, I see that I've assigned 2 different inventory statuses. Okay? So because I've set a disposition code of receive, I'm saying when I receive goods, they're going to go into inventory status receipt. If they choose a quality check disposition code, it'll go to a different status of quality. Okay? Now, that's really important because when we get into outbound, you're going to see that, if you're here for that session, you'll see that we sell from available. Okay? So once goods are received into the receipt inventory status, they're still not available in this setup for shipping. Okay? I've done that for a very specific reason that I'll explain in just a little bit. Excuse me. Okay. Now once I've found the correct option in this top grid, it moves on into the line section. Okay? And it does some additional searching. In this case, it's saying, okay, from quantity 1 to 99.99, look for a specific unit. That's what this restrict by unit option does. It says, if I'm receiving a specific unit of measure, in this case pieces, then go ahead and move on to each of the options in the location directive actions. these location directive actions are specific to line number 1. If I click on line number 2, notice that I only have one action displayed. Now, as I look at this, with line number 1, what I'm saying is I have 4 different steps. And think of each of these sequence numbers in the lower left, 1, 2, 3, 4, as a priority. Okay? So I'm saying my first priority is to look for a location that is one of the fixed locations for this SKU and use a consolidation strategy. What that's essentially saying is that I've defined some fixed locations on this item. I've said that these items should go into CP001 or CP002, but look for one location that already has this item. That's what that consolidate strategy does. It says look for one that already has that SKU in place. If it doesn't find one there, go ahead and look for a fixed location with no strategy. If it doesn't find a fixed location there, then look for a bulk location with consolidation strategy. If it doesn't find that, look for any bulk location. How do I know that it's using a bulk location here? Okay. Here, on lines 1 and 2, I'm saying, using the fixed location usage, I'm saying only fixed locations for the product. Down here, I'm saying any location, fixed or non-fixed. Okay, so how do I control which locations it should be looking for? I do that through the edit query. Here I said I'm using my location profile for that restriction. Okay. I got an asterisk there that I don't need, so I'm going to remove that. Excuse me. But I could also do restrictions on any field within my locations table or any table that relates to my locations table. Okay. So I can use this query function to be very granular about what locations I can put certain inventory into. Okay. So again, work template defines what the steps are. Location directive defines where stuff should go. And next we want to discuss how the mobile device should interact with that end user. And that's done under our mobile device menu items. So under Setup, Mobile Device menu items. Notice we have a whole bunch of these in the Contoso data. I've got one called Purchase Receive. Excuse me. Okay. So as you're looking at these mobile device menu items, as I said, this is where you're telling the system how it should interact with the user. The first thing you have to define is what is the mode. Is it work or is it indirect? Okay. Think of work as any activity that takes place in the warehouse. Okay. So any activity that's taking place in the warehouse, whether it's receiving purchase orders, putting goods away, whether it's picking to my for my shipments, whether it's cycle counting, all of those things are work in the system. Okay? But the next question I have to ask is, am I creating work or am I using work that's been created by another process? Okay? Well, when I'm doing a purchase receipt, I'm creating work. Okay? The PO has come into my dock. It's sitting there. I'm the receiver. I scan it, and the system then goes and creates work to tell me where to put it. Okay? So that's why I don't have use existing work. Now, if I look at purchase put away, which is the next step in the process, that has use existing work marked. And we see that it looks very different than it did with the purchase receive setup. Okay? But let's just go back to purchase receive for a moment. Once I've defined that it's work and that it's a work creation process, I have to define which work creation process it is. And there are a number of canned work creation processes out there. If we click on the drop down, there's a ton of them, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But essentially what each of these does is creates work. It's just going out and saying, all right, I'm going to create work to perform a particular step. Okay? In this case, I'm doing PO item receiving. I could do PO item receiving and put away, so that the same worker receives it and then immediately puts it away. Okay? In our example today, we're going to receive it and somebody else is going to put it away. Okay? There's a bunch of other options here. I could assign this to a specific work template if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that. I'm also going to display disposition code. And this is really key. Okay? This is a key setup because what this allows me to do is to have the user define whether it's a good receipt or something that needs a quality check. Okay? If I don't have that marked, the user is not going to see that option. Okay? So I have that marked. User will see that option. But the next question is, well, do I want to use default data or not? So over here on the left, you see a use default data option. What that allows me to do is click on this default data button at the top. And notice that I've said that I want to have a default disposition code for warehouse 24 of receive. Okay. What that allows me to do is to say, okay, receive is going to be the default. Somebody could change it to quality check if they wanted to. Okay. Now, having that disposition code of receive is really valuable. And the reason for that is that if you'll remember back in the discussion of our disposition codes, that'll default our inventory status. So I've said set the inventory status to receipt by default. What that does for me is it makes that inventory sitting at the receiving dock unavailable for sales orders when they go through the reservation logic. Okay? If you'll remember back on the reservation hierarchies, we have in our reservation hierarchy setup under inventory, in the reservation hierarchy setup, inventory status is always above location. So we always reserve a specific inventory status. If I don't have, if I receive into an available inventory status, when I go to release to the warehouse, what will happen is the system will say, okay, inventory is sitting at the receiving dock, go ahead and release that to the warehouse. Okay? Well, the warehouse workers aren't going to walk over to the receiving dock and pick stuff up, right? They're going to pick from the pick face. So it doesn't, in many cases, in some cases maybe it does make sense, but in many cases it doesn't make sense to have that inventory at the receiving dock available for reservation on a sales order. If I want to control that, I do it through inventory status, and inventory status can be defaulted through receipt disposition code. Okay? Okay, so I'm defaulting receive in here. Now, I can default a lot of information in here if I wanted to, item quantity, whatever. But I'm going to default my disposition code. Okay. So that's the mobile device menu item for purchase receipt. Let's look at purchase put away. Okay. So when I do that receipt, it's going to create the work. This is the step that's going to actually allow me to do the put away into my warehouse. There's a ton of options here, but some key ones that I want to define or discuss with you is this directed by option. There are a number of directed by options, and it's important that you understand what each of them are. I'm using system grouping, and the reason I'm doing that is I'm saying that I want to have the user scan the purchase order number that they're putting away and get all of the putaways for that PO number. Okay? Maybe that makes sense in certain warehouses. Maybe it doesn't. So in other warehouses, maybe I want to group my work by certain other things, like, for instance, disposition code. So maybe I do putaways by disposition code. Maybe I do putaways by, where was the other one that I wanted to look at here? By load ID. Okay? So if I wanted to do receipts by load ID, I could do that. And some companies manage their own inbound loads. So if you were going to create a load, say, with yellow freight and say, you know, these 5 POs are coming in on that load, do all the receipts for that load at one time, group them all together and do the putaways all at one time, you could do that. So I'm going to set that back to order number. So I'm using system grouping, but there's a number of other options here. One of them is system directed. System directed essentially says, well, I'm going to have the system just automatically tell the worker what to do. without them having to tell the handheld anything. Okay? They log into the handheld and it says, go do this. Go to location A, pick up item Z, and deliver it to location 1, 2, 3. Okay? That's what System Directed does. And through System Directed, I can define System Directed sorts. Okay? So this is controlling how it sorts the work that goes to the user. Fairly common would be to sort by priority of the work. Okay? So you can set priorities. And we have user directed and user grouping. So user directed is saying, okay, tell me which work ID. What you're going to see in a moment is that we create work IDs when we create work. Tell me which work ID you're working on. So we're printing out paper. It's going out there in a packet. They grab a piece of paper, scan the piece of paper barcode. That's the one they're working on now. Okay? User, they work on that one, put everything away, move on to the next one. User grouping is one where the user is actually telling them what they're doing, but they're grouping multiple work IDs together. So now we print out a list of work IDs, and they scan work ID 1, 2, 3, and 4, and work on all 4 of those. Okay? And there's a bunch of other ones in here. Cluster picking is fairly unique. We're not going to get into that today. Cycle count grouping is related to cycle counting that we won't be hitting today, but you get the point. There's a number of different options here. We're using system grouping with order number as our grouping field. Okay. One other option that I want to highlight here is this audit template ID. Okay. You'll notice that I've assigned an audit template ID here called record packing slip. So under warehouse management setup, work audit template, you can define these audit templates. And what they allow you to do a number of things. Okay? I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on the audit trigger field because it's more related to outbound functions. But the trigger event. So when should this work audit template fire? Okay, should it fire prior to completing the work or when I've completed the work? Okay? The status change I'm going to cover in the next session as well, and it's more tied to the outbound side. When a load reaches a certain status, we can trigger events to take place. But what I'm saying here is that I'm going to complete my audit trigger. When I complete the work, I'm going to trigger this audit template. And what I'm doing, my function is to capture data. Okay, so all I'm doing is I'm forcing the user to record another piece of information for me. Okay, and I'm defining that as my packing slip ID. Okay, so I want them to record my packing slip when I do this put away. All right. So now let's go through what this would look like. So I'll just create a couple POs here. I'm going to create a PO for 8001. Or 15. A0002. I'm going to say 300. I'll confirm it. Okay, so now I've created those POs, and now I just want to receive it, and it's PO number 000137. So I'm going to go to my handheld device. I go in here, my web browser, and I've connected to my local host 9999. This is just my standard mobile device. This would typically be done. This is my standard web browser, but it would typically be done through a mobile device in the warehouse. I'm going to log in as warehouse user 24. And I'm going to go to my main menu. And from here, I'll go to inbound. and I'll perform a purchase receipt. The first thing it asks me for is that PO number. So I'll use PO 000137, hit enter, and tell it which item I'm receiving, A0001. Now, I'm receiving by item. I could also receive by line. I could do something called license plate receiving. There's a number of ways to do receipts. I'm just doing it by item. I'm going to tell it which item how much of an item I'm receiving, and what my disposition code is. Notice it defaulted to receive based on my setup, but I'm going to say these are going to go to quality check. So I click OK. And the first thing it asked me for is a license plate. Okay? There was an option on my mobile device menu item to generate that license plate ID. Okay? But I don't have that set up, so I have to manually key in my license plate. Now, it would be very common to automatically generate that license plate and then have a print step in my work template, kick out a label, they put it on there, and now we have a license plate. I'm just going to call it JR0003, and it says it's done. Okay? So now I've received those goods with that quality check disposition code. So let's take a look at what that ended up doing. If we go under warehouse management, common work, open purchase work, this is what it did. It created this work ID out here. And notice what it's done. It said I received 15 pieces to the receiving dock. I need to pick them up off the receiving dock and deliver them to Q01. That's one of my quality control locations. Okay? So now, that's receiving the quality check option. Let's do the same PO, but for my other item. A0002, quantity 300, disposition code receive. Now, notice what it's doing here. I have a unit conversion on A0002 of 100 pallets to 100 pieces equals 1 pallet. Okay? I received 300. It's only creating 1 license plate. Notice up here it says LP 1 of 1. Okay? That's controlled by that unit sequence group. Okay? If I had license plate grouping unmarked on my pallet unit of measure, I would get 3 different license plates here. Okay? But because I have that marked, it's creating 1 license plate. Okay? So let's see what that did. If I look at my open purchase work, again, it created the work to pick up off the receiving dock, and in this case, it's delivering it to bulk-002. Okay? Now, why did it choose bulk-002, I wonder? Let's take a look at the location directives and try to understand that a little bit. So on my receipt, first step, it's saying only fixed locations for the product and consolidate. Well, it didn't. Bulk-001 isn't a fixed location for this product. Okay? I can tell you that without a doubt. If we take a look at the product, the fixed locations for this product are actually listed here, CP001 and CP003. So for some reason it didn't like those 2 locations. Well, the reason it didn't like them is that if we look under warehouse management, there's also a concept called location stocking limits. So under warehouse setup, location stocking limits, I have said that my web shop locations, which CP001 and CP003 are part of, have a stocking limit of 100. Okay? So I don't have room in those locations to put those 300 units there. Okay? So it's putting them into bulk. Okay, so it's created that work to put them away. Let's go ahead and go through those steps. Now, the PO put away mobile device, I get to that by going to inbound purchase put away. Remember that I set it up as system grouping based on order number. Okay? So I've got two different work IDs. We just saw that, but I'm going to do my work by purchase order number. Okay? Notice it says work 1 of 2. Okay? Pick up A0001 from receiving. Pick up A0002 from receiving. Put them down. Now, it's now telling me to go to bulk 002 with those 300 pieces of A0002 and put them down. Okay? The reason it's doing that is because this is the one I picked up second. Okay? So it goes in reverse order. So if I pick up work ID 1 and then work ID 2, I'm going to put down work ID 2 and then work ID 1. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then it says take A0001 and deliver it to Q01. Now the next thing it does is it says record that packing slip. That was that work audit template. Okay, so I defined the work audit template. I said record the packing slip. I'll call it pack slip 99. Click OK. And it says work is completed. The end result of that, if we go look at these two items, if I look at my on-hand inventory of A0001, notice that I have 15 in the Q01 location with the status of quality. Okay. Also notice A0002, excuse me, A0002 has inventory sitting in bulk 002 with a status of receipt. Okay. Neither the quality nor the receipt inventory are available to ship yet. Okay. So how do we get them available to ship? Well, the first thing we have to do is for the items that are sitting in quality, we have to make a determination, right? What are we going to do? Do they need to be scrapped, or did we check them and they're good? Okay. Well, if we check them and they're good, we can set up something called a mobile device menu item related to movements by template. Okay. So we create a work template specifically for inventory movements, and then we can move them from the QMS locations to the same bulk locations that we've defined in our purchase order location directives. Okay? So I think that one's going to be short-lived, and we'll be back here in just a flash. I hope. Okay, it's back. So I've set all that up. We're running a little short on time, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like from a mobile device standpoint. I've got that under the quality menu, and I've created one called quality put away. And the first thing it asks me for is what is the license plate or the location that you want to get inventory from. Okay? So once I've created a license plate, I can trigger activities based on that license plate. If I've printed that label and slapped it on the goods, if I want to move it, I just got to scan that license plate ID and move all of that inventory to a different location. I forgot what that license plate is, so I'm just going to type Q01. And it's license plate JR0003, item A0001, quantity of 15. And it says you're moving from status quality to status, in this case available, but I could say blocking if I wanted, or receipt if I wanted. I'm going to make it available. I click OK, and it says, OK, pick it up from a location Q01. Put it down in bulk -001. And now it's been put away in bulk 001. So let's take a look at that on-hand inventory again. And we see that it's in bulk 001 in a status of available. Okay? So now that inventory is actually available to ship to my customers. Okay? Now inventory for A0002 is still in a receipt status. At location bulk-002. So how do I get that inventory into the right status? Okay? It's sitting at bulk 002, but there was no way for me to change the inventory status when I did the put away. So what I have to do to get that to the right status is I have to run a periodic batch job. Now this batch job would be set up to run throughout the day multiple times. Excuse me. And it's under periodic inventory status change. And I'm going to say, I'm going to change it to status available. And what I can do is say, you know, any inventory in a specific set of locations or in a specific zone or based on location profile, whatever, using the select option, I want to take that and change the inventory status to available. Okay. I click OK. And the inventory status is now being changed. If I go look at that product again, I see that it has a status of available now. Okay? So that's how I would go about, after it's been put away, get the inventory into the right status so that it's available for shipping purposes. Okay? Okay, we're running short. I got a couple minutes left. Let's hit on min-max replenishment. These are the things I'm going to cover. Show of hands, who's coming to the next session? Anybody? Okay, so those of you that come to the next session, I'll maybe hit on this in a little more detail there. For those of you that aren't, the min-max replenishment, we're going to define location directives, work templates, mobile device menu items. All of that's very similar to what you've already seen on the purchasing side. So I'm going to talk a little bit about replenishment templates. The idea behind this is that I want to get that pick face replenished so that I can continue to efficiently ship product to my customer. Okay? There's a few different ways to do that in AX. One is called min-max replenishment. Another is called demand replenishment. For this session, we're going to talk about min-max replenishment. So under warehouse management setup, replenishment templates. We'll select min-max replenishment. And what I'm saying here, if I get onto the right screen, with this replenishment template, what you'll notice is that there's a grid here in the middle. Okay? This is how I define what the minimums and maximum stocking levels are for certain products at certain locations. Okay? It's done in a couple different ways. So you can say for certain products, and in this case I've clicked on select products, and I've said for A0001 and A0002, I want to have a minimum quantity of 50 and a maximum quantity of 100. Now, which locations does that apply to? In this case, it applies to only my fixed locations. Okay, so I've defined fixed locations for my SKUs, and I'm saying that I only want to use this for that purpose. Okay. Now, do I want to evaluate empty fixed locations? So if they're empty, do I want to replenish them? Yes or no? Okay. If I do, I would mark this checkbox as well. If I don't have those marked, the select locations option opens up. So I would, at that point, I would say for a given set of products, at a given range of locations, I'm going to replenish them to this min-max level. Okay? So in many systems, or logically speaking, you may be accustomed to seeing, here's my item, here's my SKU, here's the minimum, here's the maximum, here's the location. Okay? Very simple, straightforward layout. That's not the way this works. Okay? The way this works is you define the minimum and the maximums, and then you select which products and locations that applies to. Okay? It's a little different. Once you've defined that, remove these options. So once you've defined that, you actually build your replenishment work by running a batch job. And this would typically be done on a nightly basis, perhaps a weekly basis, just depending on how frequently a warehouse turns that inventory. Okay? And maybe you have multiple replenishment templates that you run for different purposes. So I've selected my min-max replenish template. I click OK. And it built some work for that. Okay, let's take a look at the work that got created. So under common work, open replenishment work. I see I have some open replenishment work to take from bulk 002 and deliver it to CP002 for item A0002. Okay, so what this is saying then is move this inventory from bulk to the web shop. Okay? Now that work is out there, the user can go along through their mobile device menu items and actually complete the work to get it into the correct locations. Yeah, question? Okay, so the question was, this process, the replenishment process, is only going to generate work. The creation of orders, is that still going to be done through master planning? The answer to that is yes. Right? This is internal to my warehouse to replenish one area from another. Right? Master planning is an external function to replenish into my warehouse based on sales demand. This would not generate work from one warehouse to another, no. That would still be handled through transfer orders. Okay, so let's just open it up broadly for questions. I know lunch is coming up, but yes? Excellent question. I neglected to show that. So the question was, I captured the packing slip ID through my work audit template. Where does that get stored? And it gets stored under Warehouse Management Inquiries, Work Audit Data Capture. Okay. So now I see in here that I have a couple of them. For my purchase orders, PO number 137 has audit data pack slip 99 with label packing slip ID. Other questions? Yes. Pardon me? Okay, so at what point do you actually post the product receipt or the packing slip? Yes, and who does that? That's an excellent question. Now, I've received these goods. They're in my warehouse. They've been put into the bulk location. At this point, if I look at my inventory transactions, they're only in a registered state. Okay? I have not received the goods. In order to receive the goods, one of two things has to happen. Somebody has to go to the PO and go do a packing slip update on it, okay? Or you have to run a periodic job under warehouse management, periodic, update product receipts. I could do a selection based on load. I could do a bunch of different selections. I'm just going to click OK, and hopefully it doesn't take very long. But this goes out and actually does the product receipts. So here's one of them that I was working on earlier, PO 37. This product receipt number is the load ID. It's not the packing slip ID that I recorded through the work audit template. So there is a disconnect there. This is really, when you look at what's happening here, this is very much just a limitation in the software, right? You know, I think that the system should record that packing slip, should post the product receipt at the point that you do that. It doesn't. Okay? Somebody has to go through another step. Okay? Any work, the question was to clarify that work is just going to register and not post the product receipt. Yes. The receipt through the handheld device is a registration of inventory, so it is physical inventory, but it has no value on the general ledger until you post those product receipts. Can you create a mobile device menu item to post the product receipt for you? No. Yes. Yeah. So the question is, can you store inventory in a warehouse management enabled warehouse and a non-warehouse management enabled warehouse? And the answer to that is yes, you can. Yep. It just, the receiving processes and the like will just be the standard receiving functions that were out there prior to warehouse management. So the question was, does this work only with mobile device? Short answer is it is intended and designed to work with mobile devices or the web interface that I've been showing you. There is a troubleshooting and debugging tool available in the AOT that opens up a AX form to perform the mobile device functions, but in a live implementation you would not use that. In addition to that, you can manually complete work through the AX client by just going to the work ID and clicking on complete work, and it will do the same thing that the mobile device did, but you lose a lot of value if you're not using the mobile device. Right. So we didn't talk about batch numbers and all those kinds of things, but when you set up, excuse me, when you set up your items to have batch numbers and the like, then you still have the ability to record that information through the mobile device. And it's managed through our mobile device menu items. So let's see here. So we have display batch disposition code. If it's batch enabled, you record the batch. You can also display the batch disposition code and record the batch disposition code at the point that you do the receipt. Question, yes? Is there label printing integration built into the product anywhere? Yes. Without getting into a ton of detail on it, there are some blog posts on it. But under document routing, this is where you define what those labels will look like. And it's basically using the Zebra programming language. And so what you say here is that for purchase orders, when I do a receipt, based on all the criteria under the Overview Fast tab, print to a specific printer using a specific layout. That layout controls what the label looks like under document routing layouts. So for instance, here's a real basic one. What this is showing is it's going to print a leading set of characters LP and then the license plate ID, a leading set of characters item number, and then an item ID, so on and so forth. But you can use the Zebra programming language to make it look as pretty as you need to. Yeah. Sure. How do you model the item, the box, and the pallet? Maybe clarify the question a little bit. So what is an item, a box versus a pallet? Yep. Yes. you want to have? Oh, tracking of the information, yes. Okay. So how do you track which cases are on a given pallet, I think, is basically the question. And there is a concept called nested license plates. It's not a super robust area of the software, but you do have the ability through a mobile device menu item to build a license plate, and it's one of the indirect options. So if I go and create build nested LP and say indirect, and choose an activity code called license plate build, that will allow me to take a group of license plates and tie them to a parent license plate. So in order for that to work for you, you would need to have a license plate per case and then build a parent license plate for the pallet. Okay? Then you can move that. But it is very much a manual set of steps to build that out. Yes? Okay. How would you set it up so that you get a separate license plate for every box you receive? Okay. The way that would be managed would be through your unit sequence group. So it would be under warehouse management, setup, inventory. No, it's not under inventory. It must be under warehouse setup. Unit sequence groups. So for instance, I could create a unit sequence group that says each box pallet. And I would say each, and we group by license plate for that. Box, we don't group by license plate for that. And pallet, we don't group by license plate for that. So now, imagine, and then I would have my unit conversions, obviously, right? So I would set up my unit conversions to be there are 10 boxes, 10 each per box, right? And 10 box per pallet. If I receive 10, I would get one license plate for the box. If I receive 20, I would get one license plate or two license plates for each box, so on and so forth. Okay? So that it's handled through that unit sequence group and the license plate grouping options. Yes? So the question was, how does the fact that my PO receipt hasn't been posted impact downstream work? So if I've received my PO through the handheld, meaning it's only been registered, can I also ship those goods on a sales order or move those goods to a picking location through replenishment? Yes, you can. Okay? Registered inventory is part of physical inventory. So it is available from a physical movement standpoint. It has no ledger value. Can you scan the vendor item number? So the answer to that one's going to be, I don't know. I'm not sure if you can scan the vendor item number. Do you know, Tim?
You can't yet. Most of our customers, the vendor numbers are internal. They work with several vendors,
Yep.
and they use an internal number. So in the warehouse, once you scan the vendor number, then you translate it to the internal number.
Yep.
It's been brought up in the past, and it's on the backlog. I have no idea what it is for that, but hopefully it's coming soon. Currently,
Okay, so for the recording, there's a the question was, is there an ability to scan the vendor item number instead of our internal item number? And the short answer to that is no, not at this time, but it's on our backlog. I would think, yeah, so the suggestion was that maybe we could set it up through the barcode table and then scan based on that, and that probably would work. Yep. Yes. Sure. So the question was, is there a way to set up concatenated barcodes so that I can do one scan that includes the item number, batch number, et cetera? Short answer is yeah, kind of. There are some limitations to that in that I don't believe it works with product variants and the ability to use configuration size color for that purpose, but it would work with batch/serial. Talking about the location directives? Or?
No, just
Oh, I'm sorry. So,
so on the item model group, there's checkbox. That checkbox actually enables the function on the website. So when you get to that purchase registration of the vendor dash there, by enabling that, when you're on the invoice and you see the link, you can add that information.
okay. We ran a little long, but thanks for coming. And